Hello and welcome to Network. My name is Pamela Lezondi with your technology and social media news. It's the final one for the year, and in this particular episode, we are looking at the year that was 2023. Remember, you can find us on SABC Network. Now, that's on Facebook, X, and Instagram. It's News Network at sabc.co.za on email. Find us there, have a conversation with us. Let's get to what this year was. Let's get to it. The South African government has an ambitious project of getting everybody connected to the internet by the year 2030. They're calling it South Africa Connect, and they've been crisscrossing South Africa to try and find different ways in order for people in urban settings and the far deep rural areas to be connected to the internet. But it's not just in South Africa where this work of connecting people is happening.
Residents of Mount Aleph in the Eastern Cape became next in line in the rollout of internet connectivity via the South Africa Connect project by the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies. Minister in the department, Mondli Gungubele, says that this is an effort of bridging the gaping digital gap in South Africa.
One of the biggest threats we're confronted with is that the history of the past economy in this country, whether it's during apartheid, even during through monopolies, it has actually separated poor people from participating. The digital era has actually provided an opportunity for poor people to have access to opportunities, be exposed to business opportunities, and be able to interact with the market globally, provincially, locally, something ordinary people could not do without driving to a particular marketplace.
The department has declared to achieve 80% connectivity by year 2024.
It started, I think, about 10 years ago now, where the idea is that the government is going to put some funds and through the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies allocate that budget to supporting infrastructure development in the country, specifically to improve the level of broadband penetration in the country across all of the sectors of society, which is the government service delivery offices, schools, hospitals, public facilities, and with phase 2 also now targeting at actual households and clinics.
The SA Connect project has connected over 4,500 households and has set 124 community hotspots across the country thus far. Phase 2 of the project focuses on core and access network infrastructure for broadband connectivity to community Wi-Fi hotspots, and in doing so collaborates with local service providers.
Our model and approach is to work with the locals and empower the local economy. That's why we are bringing in a local internet service provider. So our journey started as early as around April in terms of identifying the need here, identifying the houses that are prospective or can be connected and then be beneficiary of this project. So the process unfolds in terms of registering the subscribers of the technology and then thereafter deployment of the Wi-Fi hotspots.
We started this project because every time we want to connect with our community, it was always a problem, and we wanted to do something that would make our community, function better.
Some of the residents raised concerns of affordability for this Wi-Fi connectivity, citing that the price is too steep for them.
We would like to get this Wi-Fi, but the thing is we can't afford it. We don't have money and we depend on social grant. This Wi-Fi is very expensive if you must pay 250 Rand a month. Government must consider us and make it at least 100 Rand a month. We wish to have Wi-Fi, but we have no means. We would like our children to be able to use it for their school projects.
The department is actually allocating funds in the form of grants, right? So it's using a number of entities. It's using Santec, it's using Broadband in Fraco, and I believe, what's the other one? CETA, right, to roll out those the infrastructure, right? And part of that execution is that these entities will then work with private sector, whether it's existing service providers or mobile operators or even small SME players in the ICT space. And they're making grant funding available. We understand that if you're going to roll out, a free or a subsidized Wi-Fi network in Lomanyane and in Mafikeng, right, it's going to be very difficult for you to become very profitable, in the first year, for example. So we will give you a grant that will cover a lot of the, operating as well as capital expenditure that goes into that network to assist with at least break even or improve your likelihood of success.
The department will launch other pilots of Phase 2 of the SA Connect project in KwaZulu-Natal and Limpopo in the next coming weeks.
2023 was the first year that the world opened up fully since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. What we also saw with the full opening of the world were conferences that started to happen on a bigger scale. And there were a lot of tech conferences this year.
We attended Africacom 2023 in Cape Town, the continent's leading tech and telecoms event.
Africacom is the continent's biggest tech festival. Whether your focus is on connectivity infrastructure, ICT, this is the place to network, learn, and get deals done.
Many here at Africacom think this is the right kind of space to showcase what they do to potential investors and business partners.
We are part of Africa Ignite. We are here for the Startup Pitch competition. Additionally, we are an African-founded and African-based company. So this feels like the right stage for us to showcase our solution and to connect with other people in the ed tech space. But most importantly, because we're proud of what we've created and we're just proud to showcase it to people.
All the operators in South Africa, communication, we do it via fiber optic cables. Without fiber optic cables, all the active equipment in any telecoms network operator does not function. So we are that piece of connection between the active components of a telecommunication network.
Then there were massive announcements at Africacom. Liquid Dataport says it has partnered with satellite service provider Intelsat to boost the availability of connectivity during load shedding sessions.
So our partnership announcement this week with Intelsat is actually not regarding specifically our fiber infrastructure expansion. We have a big satellite portfolio whereby we sell satellite services into the various markets that we operate in. I mean, if you think about South Africa, for example, we've all experienced the recent power outages. And while for the fiber networks is provided, we've had actually a very good network availability of more than 99.8%. However, across the network infrastructure, the power outages has actually meant that in rural areas, you actually have quite a big outage experience for people sitting in rural areas. And therefore, the uptake of satellite services as a reliable backup or reliable main source, if you think about a mine, for example, which is very remote, satellite still today is a very important connectivity medium. And with the arrival of LEO satellites and the let's call it the investment that has brought LEO to the fore, LEO comes with high capacity, lower latency services at decent price points, which just means that the satellite services with LEO satellites actually becomes quite a big important play for us in our markets. So the partnership would allow us as Liquid South Africa to offer LEO as well as complementing what we do in our GeoMEO satellite constellations into our retail enterprise segments and into our wholesale verticals, as well as into our channel partner space.
The company also announced its collaboration with Google Cloud to expand its presence in Africa's cloud and security solutions market.
We are a very big investor in our cloud and cybersecurity business. 3 years ago, when we rebranded from Liquid Telecoms to Liquid Intelligent Technologies, it was really coming out with an aspiration and a vision of saying we're going to invest heavily into cloud and cybersecurity, and we've done that. We've done really well so far the last 3 years in that business, and the announcement of our partnership with Google just allows us to then partner with Google, also bringing their cloud and cybersecurity products into our customer base and into our partner ecosystem. And that really excites us. Our customers want multi-cloud environments and multiple partners, and therefore for us it's a very big announcement, not only in South Africa but of course also across the continent.
These are some of the discussions and collaborations the government says they are happy about. We also went to GovTech, which took place in Durban.
From CCTV solutions to data monitoring systems and cybersecurity, it's all been a part of the agenda here at GovTech.
I've seen very interesting things. I've attended the plenary sessions, very good engagement. I was presenting an input on cybersecurity there, and I was sitting in one of the panel discussion. Well, I was not a panelist, but I was just part of the audience. The engagements have been very good, and I was saying there that this GovTech is really good because the organization is excellent, but also the quality of the speakers and the inputs has been such a wonderful conference.
The government has also been talking about South Africa Connect, its initiative to connect everyone to the internet. Lisiko Systems says they did just a bit of that work while laying down fiber optic cables in the townships of Gauteng.
As a company, we then decided to enroll with these young guys to introduce them to the fiber space and also advise them about other opportunities that are in the IT space. What we then did is we also took the guys so that we also advise on how they can enhance and better themselves by acquiring the IT skills and selling the product as well, which is fiber.
We also found Ambani Africa here. They've gamified mother tongue learning.
So we really focus on being able to teach different African languages. We firstly focus on South African languages, and we've also got a few African languages as well, like Yoruba, Shona, Swahili. So we often get parents who are like, I don't understand why my kids can't speak this language. But we really focus on creating immersive experiences. So not just studying language for the sake of it, but how do you make it a part of your life? How do you use fun games? How do you use animations to make the learning journey for languages interesting?
Maybe Saduna has been to GovTech a few times. He's here again this year.
We are really trying to get the innovation out there and making sure that we are bringing value propositions. So because GovTech is quite a lot of audience with decision makers, CIOs, directors, so we see that the need is quite critical for us to always participate and show up.
The South African government wants to introduce robotics and coding in schools. They're piloting it in some township and rural schools. Those that have started the curriculum are also at GovTech to show what is likely going to be introduced everywhere. SABC Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It's News Network at sabc.co.za on email. After the break, we chat about South Africa's tech education needs and the work that's been happening and the work that has to happen still. Stay with us. SABC Network on Facebook, X, and Instagram. It's News Network at sabc.co.za on email. Welcome back. Now, the South African government has been piloting its projects of introducing robotics and coding training in schools. And this is something that they had said they want to introduce on a wider scale in the year 2024. But there are other initiatives that are trying to answer to South Africa's tech education needs. And to talk to me about South Africa's does tech education need and what must happen, especially when it comes to those that are already in industry and children and teachers as well. Langa Zulu, who is from Algo at Work. There's also Bataung Kotsukwane, who is from IE African. Gentlemen, hello and thank you very much for being a part of our network.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, bro.
Thanks for having us, bro.
Yeah. Langa, maybe let's start with you. How big are these needs of training young kids and teachers in South Africa when it comes to tech education?
Yeah, it's quite immense, when you look at where we are versus the rest of the world, you quite realize, the space that we find ourselves in. For example, earlier on this year, I read an article where 1,000 AI startups were launched globally. And you ask yourself a question, how many of those were coming from South Africa? And I can tell you now that the number is 0. So that is reflective of the big gap from a skills perspective that is there, in our communities, in our country. And I think we certainly need to do a lot more so that we can speed up the progress, speed up the access as well, open up the access to a lot more young people across communities in South Africa.
Bataung Langa speaks about the lack of skills when it comes to various industries, because I think tech is everywhere
100%.
And everybody needs to deal with it on a daily basis in the work that they do. How much work do you think needs to be done still when it comes to people who aren't now kids in school or people who aren't at university or other training colleges, but people who are already in industry?
I think, Brother Zondi, to paint the picture much more broader, I think it's important for us to understand how wide and how vast this problem is. So 4 out of 5 corporate South Africans really struggle in terms of tech adoption, in terms of attracting and attaining the particular tech skill that they need. And we see this not only just in South Africa, but many other African countries, such as Kenya, Egypt, and Nigeria. Now, this problem is wide, and I think some of the top tech talent that companies are struggling to get. When you look in the top 5, it includes cybersecurity, data and analytics, AI, machine learning, software development, and design thinking. These are some of the top skills that are needed. And I think the fact that the fact that companies can't really get these people, it speaks to like the skills gap. And I think that needs to be solved 100%.
And how do we solve it? Because it's different when, for example, you say we're introducing it at grade R, right? And as opposed to someone who has been working for 20, 30 years, and suddenly they're being told this design thinking. And I'm sure the first thing that goes on in their minds, what is this design thinking that you're talking about, and what do I do in order for me to continue being employable?
So for the benefit of our listeners, in South Africa, this is how, workplace sort of skills development is organized. We have the Skills Development Act, right? And the Skills Development Act mandates that corporates contribute to the skills development levy. Now, when you look at just this year, we've collected over 4.6 billion. Now, this part of funds in the skills levy that has been used and collected by private sector for the benefit of SETAs and many other skills development, I think that's where we need to focus, particularly looking at the impact of these programs and skills development programs, whether it's accredited or non-accredited, that we have going on in the country.
Langa, then who must do the training? Because there's a lot of emphasis on government, and government sometimes promises that they will do the work. And I guess that's why people always go back to government to say, you promised. But who must do the work? Is it government still?
No, not necessarily. I think government, I think as my brother was, like the framework is what government is focusing on, right? The policy and ensuring that government can be an enabler, for many of us who are industry role players. So I think private sector is quite key to the conversation and critical to the conversation. Many young people, such as myself, such as him, we got to rise up and say, what is it that the country needs at this point in time? You've got many, for example, computer science graduates who may be sitting at home. They could establish coding initiatives in their communities and say, wait a minute, there is something called the skills levy. How do we link up with SETAs? The same way that we work with SETAs, in a number of communities in this country to roll out robotics programs. So we need a lot more of that. And we need SETAs who are going to say, we need to heavily invest in these initiatives, in these communities, because all of the SETAs need to contribute equally to the conversation. It's not just only maybe, for example, MICT SETA. For example, if you look at the chemical industry's SETA, that is leading in terms of the robotics rollout in this country. Now, it's an interesting case study to say, how is it that a chemicals industry SETA has the biggest robotics program in the country? But it also tells you to say, wait a minute, because we're in an era and a phase of revolution and disruption, so any other player can come up and say, wait a minute, we've got to contribute as different institutions, as different agencies, as different organizations to contribute meaningfully to the conversation of the skills, as we are talking right now.
How do you deal with the distribution of skills, where you run away from things being concentrated in urban centers, like, for example, your Cape Town, your Tshwane, your Johannesburg, and distribute wider to the rest of the nation, especially the rural areas?
So there's quite a big intention from government institutions and even the private sector as well coming into the picture to launch a lot of labs, robotics labs, computer labs in rural communities. To such a point that I actually think that if you're in an urban area, from a 4R perspective, you could actually be disadvantaged because of that fact. I mean, case in point, we've got the biggest robotics program right now deep in Babananga, which is a rural area. So a kid in Umlazi, for example, a kid in Eskawini, in Soweto, may not have access to that. You know what I mean? So I think the shift is happening. But one of the things that South Africans need to understand is that things do not happen overnight. So progress, is slower, so there's a process to it. And we've got to appreciate that. In as much as, we have the ills that we are dealing with in our respective communities, but things are not going to happen overnight. But as I can tell you, there is a big shift happening, and I can tell you within the next 2 to 3 years, there's going to be a lot more robotics and AI startups popping up, and it won't be from Soweto.
But you've been doing quite a bit of work, especially with corporates in provinces like the Northern Cape. 100%. And how big is a need there in those provinces? Because sometimes we may forget about spaces like the Northern Cape.
The need is massive, Brother Zondi. Look, Brother Zondi, outside of the skills levy, companies have what we call a CSI budget, right? Which is your corporate social responsibility. And we see, just in this year, South African companies have collected a total of 10.9 billion. But now when we look in terms of the distribution of where the causes are being financed into, the bulk of it is education, yes, but the bulk of it is going to the top 4 provinces: Gauteng, Western Cape, KZN, and Mpumalanga. Now, we're not seeing a proportional investment in rural provinces, blue-collar provinces, such as your Northern Cape, such as your Free State, such as your Bukonebu Perima. And I think that's where corporate South Africa needs to be a little bit more conscious. Why do I say that? The need for ICT skills, ICT awareness, ICT conscientization in places like the Northern Cape, in places like the Free State, is much more heightened, particularly why in trying to bridge the gap between rural provinces and urban provinces. Even this definition of rural and urban provinces, I think it's very problematic. I think we should look at South Africa holistically and understand in provinces like the Northern Cape, for example, there's massive investments in terms of IPPs. There's massive investments in terms of the green hydrogen gas plant that is going on there. All these strategic infrastructure projects and many other things that are happening are going to require skills. Therefore, we need to start rethinking at where do we plant the seeds much more proportionally across the country.
Langa, earlier I did speak about government's projects to introduce robotics and coding training in schools. Is it really that much of a need to introduce it in grade R?
Most certainly. I think when we started working with 8-year-olds and introducing them to C++, C#, Python, and that kind of stuff, and a couple of years ago, a lot of people didn't think that young people could compete, with university students, with industry professionals, at a global level, right? And what we've seen through our Robotics Academy is 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds participating in hackathons, in industry summits, and in makeathons, and building amazing prototypes. And that is to show that, if you plant the seed much earlier, because the most critical thing here is the aspect of critical thinking. It's a culture you've got to cultivate at a young age. You know what I mean? So a child is much more prone to questioning things, for example. They question everything. They have the bravery. They don't fear to ask questions. They don't care much about the politics and all the boundaries and the regulations. And so what you tend to find is a younger person is likely to produce something groundbreaking as opposed to an older person. So it is critically important that we invest heavily in grassroots. To my disappointment, policy doesn't speak much to that aspect. And I think that's the shift that we need, so that private sector could say, wait a minute, there is an incentive for us to invest in grassroots development and talent development, most importantly. So introducing, children in grade R and primary school to coding, actual coding, software engineering, not just playing with toys and that kind of stuff. They have to build products. They've got to develop apps. They've got to develop hardware, solutions. And I think that's where we should focus as a country.
Yeah, and teachers, because sometimes the worry is that teachers are not trained, and who then trains the children? Because you might find a situation where it's the children who are training those that are supposed to be training them.
Most certainly. So I think there's an overemphasis and maybe an obsession with training programs in this country from that perspective. My submission is that teachers do not really need training. They need the will.
Okay.
They have to put in the hours and say, wait a minute, instead of me watching, some series and that kind of stuff, how do I use that time at home and spend on YouTube, for example, and get in tutorials? And come back to class, not with the mindset that says, I'm here to teach, but I'm here to share and, open up the conversation so that we can figure out things together with the learner.
Sure. Thank you very much, Langa Zulu. And thank you, Batao Mkhutsukwana. Batao Mkhutsukwana there is from iAfrican, and Langa Zulu is from Algo at Work. It is SABC Network. That's on Facebook, X, and Instagram. News Network at sabc.co.za on email. That's our 2023. Enjoy the new year and have a great one from me, Spumelele Zondi, and the rest of the network team. Have a good one and enjoy those festivities.